experiencing, to stay connected. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and hit record so that we have this session recorded. And we will go ahead and hop on. I'm going to do a quick, I'm going to let Leslie introduce herself, and then Laura and I will introduce ourselves. So Leslie, thank you again for joining us, but if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself, we would love that.
Absolutely. So I am an educator. I started teaching high school English about 15, almost 15, I guess in August will be 15 years ago. That sounds crazy. I am a learner at heart. Like, I just want to learn all of the things all of the time. I feel like if I'm learning, then I have things to offer. I went from teaching English to 9th and 10th graders, speech and debate, things like that, and moved into an instructional coaching role. I was there for over 5.5 years, and then I became an assistant principal this past October. So this is a new experience for me, and if anything and everything could have happened and gone wrong in my first year, it has. So, like, we've had tornadoes, and now we've got COVID, and I mean, I feel like I'm super prepared for just anything, really. So that's kind of where I am. I have a husband and 2 wonderful children, and I just love to learn. I feel like I'm never, it's summer, but I'm never really off, like a teacher's brain never really turns off. So I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, we're super excited to hear you share your stories and give us some good tips moving forward. I'm Laura Albright, and I know you all have probably seen my face or name in these FI Connects before, so I recognize your names and your faces too, so thank you for being here again. Hopefully we can stay connected throughout this summer as well. It's been something that I look forward to every week, every other week, how we've been moving through this process.
Yep, and I'm Brittany Miller. I'm a colleague of Laura's, and we get the honor and privilege of working with schools and districts, across North Carolina that are building programs and making change in their schools. So we're excited to connect with you, and again, kind of take a moment as we come to the end of the school year to reflect, to pause, and to look back. So that is really the focus of today, reflecting and learning, reviewing and recharging, because a lot has happened with remote learning. It has been, like Leslie said, a wild year. There's no doubt. So what can we do to kind of take a pause, take care of ourselves, and take the best of this crazy year, and make some real change moving forward. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Leslie, who's going to lead us forward. And Leslie, if you'll just, mention whenever you want to move, I'm going to stay in control of the slides just so everybody else knows. So if she's like, next slide, that's why. So just let me know when you want to move forward.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Laura. Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So there's a little bit more about me, but nothing crazy. I love to be outdoors. I enjoy hiking, and I run mostly to get to be by myself and have a little bit of me time, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. I have 2 kids, Hudson and Isla, and a crazy little pup who, I don't know if you can hear him, but he is running all around this house. I'm not sure what is outside, maybe a squirrel, but he sees it. So right now I'm reading Innovate Inside the Box. I'm going to use it in what we're talking about. I don't know if any of you have heard of George Couros, and if you haven't, oh my word,
he's awesome.
Amazing. So you need to get this book. One of the most impactful reads I've ever read is Mindset. This is a book, and I've got a couple things. I've got props. This is a book that affected me personally and professionally, and I think everybody needs to read it, and I'm going to be reading it with my staff this coming year. And then some things that I'm going to be reading that I have on my docket are Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. Brain research is is very interesting to me, and culturally responsive teaching is very timely. So I'm very excited. It actually, Amazon says it will be delivered tomorrow. So it will be my beach read, and I'm super pumped about it. And then there are several other books that I'm going to talk about later. And then my quarantine confession is that I am so excited that I will never, ever be my child's teacher again. Ever. Can't do it. It's not going to happen. It's not in the cards for us. All right, next slide. So when I was asked to talk to you guys, so these are two memes that I shared with my teachers. I tried to check in on them pretty often, and I would send them texts and things like that. But one of the first things I wanted to share with you is that it's super important that we make an effort to reach out and connect. It's very easy when you're in a building to pass someone and say, hey, how's it going? How's your day? And then you can tell based on their body language and their facial expressions how they're doing. But as of right now, we don't have that luxury. So I found these two memes and I freaking love them, because who doesn't love Kanye and Britney? They're the biggest train wrecks ever. But it's hilarious because a lot of my teachers can relate. So if you want to, in the chat, pop in there where you are. Are you feeling like a Kanye? Are you feeling like a Britney? Which Britney? This really is a way that I was able to kind of gauge who was where in their, mental game, and how things were going. I got a lot of, for Kanye's, a lot of 7s, 8s, and 9s. And then for Britney's, I got some 1s, and I got a 7 once. I was real worried about Britney, number 7. I never got a 4, which I was really excited about, or a 6, also really excited about that. But I feel like we really have to be able to find a way to determine how we're doing. And it's super important to say, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? How's it going? What can I do for you? So I'm looking at your comments. A 7 on Kanye. These are great. A 4 for both. Oh, some of you are oh dear. Oh, 4s. Some of you are very close to the end of your school year, so I just encourage you to keep your head up and to stay positive. I know this is difficult time for learning, and something that we've never done before. So find that positive spot and that bright spot in your day, and hopefully this is part of that for you. All right, next slide. So when I was asked to talk about reviewing and recharging, I've done a lot of brainstorming over the last couple of weeks, and I think it's super important that we first recharge. I think it's super important to take a minute when school is done and we step away. My district finished up school about a week ago. I'm still really not sure what day it is. I don't know if anybody else has felt like that since schools have been shut down. But so we've been out. Yep. So for about a week since today, a week ago today was our last work day, and it's been super important for me personally to recharge, to step away from my computer, to step away from my phone and my email long enough to catch my breath, to clear my mind, because I know a lot of what we do on a daily basis affects the way that we sleep. If we're not getting good sleep, then we can't recharge. The ASCD put out an article about making an effort to get better sleep. Like, this is something we as teachers, this is not a job that we leave at school. People think that we can, but we cannot. It's very difficult to do so. So it's super important to remember that you've got to make sure you make an effort to take care of yourself. So first, coffee. So let's go to the next slide and talk about some ways that we can recharge. One of the things that I've really tried to focus on is making me time a date. Like, in my calendar, it's an appointment, 30 minutes for myself at least. And every day that looks very differently. So I really like to get outside, but when I'm outside with my children, I'm super aware. I'm making sure there aren't any snakes. I'm watching for any dangers. You know, somebody's always falling and has a boo-boo, so I'm always having to pay attention. So that me time is not necessarily my parenting time either. It's literally me by myself doing something for myself. That's self-care. So I've got several apps up here that kind of have supported me through that. First is Peloton. Now, I don't own a Peloton because I'm an educator, so let's be real. But Peloton app is free. When I signed up for it, it was 90 days. Now I think you can sign up for free for like 60 days. I'll have to double check. But it has free workouts on it. So I get outside, and there's an outside category. I'll get outside and I'll have a coach in my head telling me when to run, when to slow down, how to watch my body posture, how to take care of myself, how am I breathing. So while running lets me definitely disconnect, I often get in my head while I'm running and I'm still thinking about things that I want to get away from. But Peloton gives me a coach in my ears, and I can run and somebody can tell me, let go of it. You're doing great. You're doing this for you. You're healthy. Half the battle is getting outside, just getting there so that you can participate in bettering your lifestyle. So a great app, a great resource. Please check it out. Sign up for free. I think you have to use your teacher account email in order to get the free. I think you need to double check. But it's been a life changer for me. It's got yoga, it's got stretching. There's even stretching at your desk for 10 minutes, resources like that, and cardio and meditation, running, biking. So if you have a bike, you don't have to have that bike, the Peloton bike. Anyways, great resource. I suggest you check it out. And then the next one with a little doggy face in it is super cute. It's called, oh gosh, I forgot the name of it now. I was just looking at it a minute ago. Down Dog. That's it. So it is yoga that you can do with your kids. And it's super fun. My kids enjoy it. I've used it for myself, by myself. They also have a teacher educator trial. I think it's educator/student. So if you have a student email, if you're a grad student or something like that, you can use it also. And then I put YouTube up there because let's be real, all you have to do is Google yoga for women, or 15-minute yoga exercise, or 15-minute strength and conditioning workout. All you have to do is Google it, and YouTube will take you straight to what you're looking for. So there are so many resources on YouTube. But the most important piece is that we take time to be healthy. I did not expect the toll that sitting behind a computer for 8 hours a day would have on my body. My hips started to hurt. I realized that my posture wasn't good. Like I'm doing it now. My posture wasn't good because whenever I was looking at my computer, I would like hunch over like this. So you've got to focus on your posture. And I didn't realize what it was going to do to my body. So I'm a pretty active person. When I'm at school, I'm up and down the stairs, in and out of classrooms, and down this hall and down that hall. And so when I'm running a school as an assistant principal from my laptop, I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere. So I had to make a special effort to move and to get my body going. And then I realized quickly that I also don't have hobbies. So Pinterest is like the hobby hub of all apps. And so I got onto Pinterest and was just floating through and finding some things and saw some like at home. My husband does a lot of woodworking. So I took some of the things that he had made and started painting them. And I really enjoy doing that. And getting outside, I can be outside or I can be inside. And it's truly the pleasure of creating something and watching it from start to finish, and then putting it in my home somewhere. That's been really enjoyable for me. So Pinterest has been a great outlet as well. And then podcasts. And I guess in tandem with not having hobbies, I also hadn't really taken time to look into things that were just interesting to me. So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, non-educational. I will talk about the educational ones later because I have been listening to those, but I wanted to search for things that were significant to me personally, that I found interesting. I've also found that as an educator and a parent, those two things often become my identity, and they kind of block out the interests and passions that I used to carry with me as a very young adult without either one of those titles. So searching podcasts and just listening, because people are talking about everything. You want to know about it, all you have to do is search podcasts for it. And then the last app is called Marco Polo. I don't know if you have Marco Polo. It is probably the best thing since sliced bread, and let me tell you why. I love Snapchat because I can send fun pictures of my everyday life to my friends, and they can see them. And I love texting my family and friends. But what I have also found in light of COVID is that everybody is still really busy. Like, I have several friends. I have a friend who lives in Louisville, Kentucky, and another friend who's here in town, but they're both educators, and we could never find time to FaceTime or to have a little group Zoom or whatever. I have 3 really close friends that I speak to on a regular basis. Anyway, so Marco Polo is an app, and you can record instead of text your message to a friend, and then they can respond. And you can do large groups. So I made a family group. I have 2 sisters, an older sister that lives here in town and one who lives in Charlotte, and then a little brother, and he lives a little bit further. So, and then we added my mom and my nieces, and we get to see each other on a regular basis. One of the things that I've also know, I knew this about myself. I'm a social butterfly. I need people. I need people around me. I want to interact with people. I want to talk to them. So texting and sending snaps of, my everyday life really wasn't doing it for me. I need people. So I've also used this professionally with my principal and my leadership team. And it was really great because there's a lot to be said about facial cues and tone and somebody's state of mind when you can talk to them and hear them talk. So Marco Polo is an awesome, awesome resource. Check it out. And then this is a book that I read, Your Oxygen Mask First. This is a book I read with my AP team, and it really talks about habits that you need in your everyday life, whether you're a leader in as a administrator or a business owner or a teacher or a parent, whatever that is. I mean, things that really you're like, oh, yeah, I probably should do that. So I'm going to read you a couple of the chapters, like forget work-life balance, doubling your resilience, deal with your emotional junk. How about that? Managing your mental health, quadrupling your IQ, so learning for yourself, and then tackling tough conversations and love lessons. And so this is just a book that if you really think about it, they always tell you on a plane, you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can take care of anybody else. That's exactly what this talks about. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people. And that's what we do. We are servants, educators, and that's how we work. So it's super important to take care of yourself. So remember, 30 minutes a day, take care of yourself, make it a date, put it on your calendar, put it in your, I have everything in my calendar. If it's not in my calendar, it's not going to happen. So 30 minutes for you every day for self-care. Okay, so next slide. So once you're done recharging, and however long that takes you, it's super important to review and reflect. So I just wrote down 4 questions that I think are very important. One of the things that I have taken up is, I used to do this as a teacher because I would journal with my students, but one of the things that I have taken up as an adult middle-aged adult is journaling and writing. One of my friends found a journal. It was like one of those 5-minute journals. So some people are feel very intimidated by writing. So because they're worried about it being perfect or whatever. So this is just a journaling idea where every morning for 5 minutes, you write down 3 things you're thankful for and 3 things that will make the day successful. And then at the end of the day, you write down for another 5 minutes, 3 things that went well and 3 things, there was one more thing, 3 things that I think you want to be thankful for tomorrow, or something else that kind of leads into the next day. So writing is super important. If you don't have a notebook, you need a notebook. If anybody knows me and sees me without this notebook right here, I don't know, something's wrong. You need to find my notebook. So these are 4 questions that I really want you to think about as you're reflecting on the school year. What did I do well? We have to start with what went well. We have to start with the good things. What did I learn about myself as an educator? I learned something about myself all the time. And so that's super important to reflect back on yourself personally. What can I change or do better? I thought as a first-year teacher that if I can just get the first 3 years under my belt, I won't have to plan anymore. I'll just have it all in these nice little notebooks and I'll be good to go. And I just won't ever have to plan, and I won't be at school till 5 p.m. every night. Well, I was very naive. You guys know this. I think, thank you for LOLing. That is funny, right? Because that's what I thought would happen. It would just be something I would do I would just be okay. I would make it. I wouldn't have to stress out every day. But teaching is a lot of work. And I don't know that there was a year that I ever taught anything the same way. I don't know that there was a year that I ever taught the same literature. Content was somewhat the same, but I always did it differently because I learned something new. So if you're not changing and adapting, then we're going to talk about how we can do better and do it differently. And then how will I know next year is successful? So one of the things I like to do is to think through dreamland, nirvana. What would it look like if next year were perfect? What would happen? What would I accomplish? Where would I be? What would students know? And how would I know that they know it? And then in looking at those 4 questions, I'm sure I can fill up a whole notebook with the answers of these things, but in looking at these questions, I can sit back and find areas for work, for things that I need to say, okay, I need to do better. One of the things that I did as a teacher at the end of every quarter, so every 9 weeks, every 6 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever, I would ask the kids, what's working, what's not working, what do I need to change, and how can I do better as a teacher? So those 4 questions. And I was always involving what I was doing. And I feel like every educator, no matter what level you are, no matter what you teach or what you're doing, every educator has to think, how can I do it better? And the more often that we reflect and we ask for feedback, the better we will be as leaders. So go ahead and move to the next slide. So life after emergency remote learning. I don't know that this past 3 months has been, I don't know how we got here. This is insane to think about COVID and school shutdowns and government shutdowns and how things have changed. So I decided I wanted to focus on 3 things. If there were 3 things that we could focus on moving forward, these are the ones that I want them to be: assessment and grading. Being thrown into emergency remote learning has really pushed limits of teachers on how we assess what students really know. And one of the things George Curio says is that in order to evoke change, you have to force it. Because people, unless they have to, don't always choose to change, right? So this emergency remote learning has forced people to do things differently. Thank goodness, because now we're at a point where we're about to turn this up on its head, and I'm excited about that. So assessment and grading is one. Social and emotional learning. We have to be prepared for the students that are going to enter our buildings August, September, whatever. And they are going to come back with probably a little bit more baggage than normal. And we have to be prepared for that. And then in light of recent events, equity. Equity is so important, and it has been, but now that we have a larger spotlight on it, we have the opportunity to make some big changes. Okay, so let's start with assessment and grading. I could spend all day. No, you're perfect. Go ahead. Right on cue. You're doing great, Brittany. So what I could talk all day about mastery learning and standards-based grading. And if you know me, you know that about me. I have a passion for pushing students to learn in a manner that is personalized, that drives them because they're interested, piques those interests that they have, but also grading them because I do not agree with the 0 to 100 grading scale. I do not think that that is an effective grading scale. We are no longer in the industrial age. We don't need that. So I did a webinar for Rowan Salisbury Schools. It's about mastery learning and standards-based grading. I pulled in some really great resources. I created a outline for how to determine standards-based grading. So how do you determine if a child is approaching proficiency and what that looks like? And I used a bike analogy, which I have found as very helpful to people who are not quite sure how to do that. So go and watch, because I could spend all day here. So we're going to move on. I hope you check this out, but mastery learning and standards-based grading, it is linked here. So when you guys get this slide, when you get these slides, you'll have that. So the next piece is social and emotional learning. This is something that I think is evolving and has evolved over time, which is fantastic. But my 3 focuses here are to number one, be prepared. We have to realize that we have students that have gone back into unhealthy environments for an extended period of time, and it's going to affect who they are. I have taught students in the past that came to school because it's where they got heat and air, it's where they got water, it's where they could wash their clothes, it's where they could eat breakfast and lunch, not knowing if they'd get another meal, and it's where they would have some adult, give them affirmation that they could do it. So if they're not getting that every day, and they haven't gotten that for what is it? It's June, March, April, May, 3 months, then they're coming back to us in August a little heavier than probably in the past. So we need to be prepared. Number 2 is to recreate your environment. Innovate Inside the Box has a whole chapter on empathy and how to teach kids empathy and how to model empathy. And one of the suggestions that George Couros gives is to rebuild your classroom with students. If we support them as learners and we allow them to help us build the environment in which they are comfortable, they feel empowered, they feel encouraged to know themselves and to learn more, then the learning that can occur inside of a classroom, despite some of the emotional and traumatic trauma that's been in their lives, we're going to be successful. Some of the kids in our classes, we're the only opportunity for them to have a positive role model. So we need them to come into this environment and feel invested. And then the third thing is to focus on relationships. I know you guys have seen the videos, the teacher greeting the students at the doors every day and having a high five or a pounds, or maybe they have a special handshake, or maybe they have a special phrase that they use in greeting each other. I know that's probably going to look different because of COVID, but I think the premise of greeting every single child every single day is super important. As a high school teacher, I made sure that every day a child walked into my room, I addressed them by their name. So, hey, Brittany. Good morning, Laura. Good to see you, Brian. I'm so sorry that you weren't here yesterday, Terry, but I'm glad you're here today. Every day, because I read somewhere that the most beautiful sound to an individual's ears and their brain is their name. And sometimes children don't always hear their own names because they're called ugly things or they're not spoken to at home. So if we really focus on letting them hear us and calling them by name, we involve ourselves in an interaction with a child that builds that relationship. I had some students last year, 2 years ago, that were very quiet. There were two. And every day, this one young man, I didn't know how he was going to respond when he came in. He had just come out of homebound because of behavioral issues. Anyway, so every day that he came in, regardless of what baggage I might have been carrying, how I might not have slept because I was up all night with my child, somebody maybe rode my tail on the way to work and that made me mad. Whatever baggage I carried with me, I had to lose it because I needed to be all in for him. And he needed to know that I was excited to see him, that I was excited about learning, and I had to approach our relationship with something he was interested in. And he loved horror movies. And guys, I don't do horror movies. I don't watch them. But if you Google a horror movie, it can tell you all about it. So that's what I did. I went and I would Google a horror movie, a new one, and I'd be like, oh my God, did you see this movie? And he went from closed down, fists balled, arms and shoulders out, to this kid who wanted to share with me something he was excited about. So it's super, super important to focus on those relationships. All right, next slide. So the third piece is equity. About a year ago, I read The Hate You Give. And I cried a lot because it was an emotional read. It's heavy. It is very enlightening. I learned a lot. But over the last week, I've also learned that I don't know a lot. And so these 4 books that I have out here, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, looks at promoting authentic engagement and rigor among culturally and linguistically diverse students. I'm super excited about that. Brain research is extremely important to me. Push Out the Criminalization of Black Girls in Schools, White Fragility, and Blind Spot. These are 4 books that I just ordered, and I'm going to be reading this summer because I feel it is, as an educator, my job to, number 1, be educated. Number 2, to never stop learning. I don't know everything about everything, but it's super important that I, number 1, acknowledge that, and number 2, make an effort to be accessible to my students, and to empathize with my students, and whatever that looks like for you, you got to do it. So for me, it's learning. I have to learn more. I have to be more aware. And so that's how I'm going to do that. So equity is super important. And it's something that needs to be a part of everybody's learning experience. So these are 4 books, and I did some research on these books, and I'm really excited to read them. And so I hope that maybe one day I can share with you more about equity and what I've learned through my through this experience of reading and educating myself. So while I don't have a lot to share here, I do want you to know that resources are out there, and it's super important that we build this capacity within our schools. So next slide, and I believe this might be my last slide, I think. One of the things that George Couros, I know I keep talking about him, y'all, but you have to read this book. I'm serious. It's the best thing. It's the best thing. I can't tell you, I don't even want you to see like the notes that I've made. If you follow me on Twitter, every chapter I'm pulling out my biggest takeaways. But one of the things George Couros calls educators are master learners. You have to consider yourself a master learner because we are always learning. Education is changing every year. One of the things that I always hear, and I've heard it as an instructional coach and even a little bit as an assistant principal, is that teachers are always like, well, I don't want a new learning management system because I don't want to change. And I'd be like, you know that every 3 years our learning management system changes. You know it does. It does every time. Or I don't want to use this program, or I really like this program. I don't ever want to change. It's going to change. As an educator, you don't get attached to anything because it is always changing. So is technology, so is our world. And if we are not learning and evolving with it, we are being a disservice to our students. So I encourage you to read, to listen, to learn. If you're not on Twitter, that is probably the most powerful PLN that I can suggest to any educator, because there is so much to learn from master educators that are already on Twitter. If you have a Twitter, I would highly suggest getting a tweet deck, because I like to curate my chats. So I have tweet decks, and it looks like columns, and you can follow specific people, you can follow hashtags, you can follow groups, whatever. And it really allows me to move within Twitter and sort of organize it for myself, because I need organization. Twitter sometimes can look a bit clustery, and I'm not all about that life, so I need some organization. But if you have Twitter, you should get TweetDeck. It really is a great tool to help you curate some of your resources. And there's not a day that I don't go on Twitter and I'm like in a rabbit hole reading articles and watching videos and finding more that I didn't know that I'm so excited about. So I highly suggest it. I highly suggest you become a master learner. And that just means that you continue to read, you continue to listen, and you continue to learn, because every day we have to come and step in and be there for our kids, because we have to put them first and we have to be our best selves for them. So take care of yourselves, and be willing to learn more every day. I think that was over 30 minutes, and I'm really sorry.
No, you're perfect. It was great. So can we give Leslie a round of applause? Thank you, Leslie. Did so good. Thank you so much for sharing all these resources. And there's even an icon. I don't think I've ever used the applaud icon. But thank you for sharing a lot of what we just wanted to take a moment. Does anybody have any questions for Leslie to dig into a little bit deeper before Laura and I are going to add a little bit of additional resources? But if you guys have any questions, well, we'll do a quick pause.
Leslie,
Brian, go ahead.
Brian, hey, I just wanted to ask you, how was the transition going from the instructional coaching role at a high school to an elementary assistant principal? I know you had worked with the bigs and then you went to the littles. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you changed your mindsets and such?
Absolutely. So one of the things that, and I've gotten this question a lot actually. So one of the things that I've found is that high school kids are the same as elementary school kids. They're just larger, and they have more coping mechanisms to hide the things that elementary school kids word vomit. So the big kids are still kids, and they still need love, and they still need somebody to care for them and somebody to say, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be upset, it's okay to be frustrated. And the other piece when dealing with teachers is that I would say that being an instructional coach did me well, because I have my master's in reading and literacy, and that's an instructional coaching degree. But good teaching is good teaching, and you can walk in a room and know it. You know what I mean? Like, you feel it. And so I think supporting teachers is super important. And I've transitioned better than I thought I would. And I will say this, elementary school is a breath of fresh air, because children in elementary school are so excited to be in school. They are so pumped. They are so enthusiastic. They are excited to see me. I've never gotten so many hugs. Hugs were new to me when I got to elementary school, because in the high school, we don't do a lot of hugging. That doesn't go well. But I will say that I spent 15 years in high school, and I worked every day to convince high school kids that learning and education was important. And when I got to the elementary school, I found that they very much have a desire and a thirst to learn. So something that's very interesting to me, Brian, and you're in the middle school world, so maybe you can help me out. I don't know where that changes. I've always wanted to do middle school, but I don't know where, and it's probably got something to do with the brain, which I'm going to learn more about, but I don't know where that enthusiasm, that drive, that thirst to learn changes from the little body to the big body.
I will say, in my experience, I see a big change between our 6th and 7th graders. I think their physiology kicks in there in a lot of cases. When I needed natural kind of purity during the day, I would go to my 6th graders and just enjoy being with them, because they had that more excitement. I think somewhere after 6th grade, as their bodies change, we see that change, and they, become different, and social kicks in more.
Yeah. I had a student at the high school level who I co-taught with a teacher who was struggling, and every day I would come in, and she was not very excited to see me, but I was super excited to see her buddy. And I would smile and I would laugh, and she'd be like, "Really? Are you smiling again?" And I looked at her one day, and I'm just going to use my daughter's name so I don't use hers. I said, "Isla, what do you have to not be happy about? Let's talk about it." And I learned a lot about her, but she also learned a lot about me, because I taught her, and she told me this, I taught her that feeling excited and being happy is like half the battle. If you allow all the negative to infiltrate into who you are, it takes over your mind and it takes over your body. And so I consider myself a pretty happy person, a pretty positive person. There are things that can get me down, but one of the things that I noticed between the two are that high school kids really struggle being happy sometimes. And so I think that was something that I worked really hard at as a high school educator. So I'm finding my place in the elementary world. I'm loving it. I just love to learn, and I learn new things all the time in the elementary school. But it's been an interesting change, and I'm enjoying it. I might try to dabble in middle school one day. I'll need your expertise, Brian.
Maybe that's one session we can have of FI Connects one day, because there is something that happens. I work with the ones across, all different grade levels, and there is definitely a transition. But we have just a little bit that we wanted to share, and then we'll have a final Q&A at the very, very end. Because I want to kind of build on everything that Leslie shared. First off, George Kuros is amazing. I got to see him speak at ISTE, which is it's basically an instructional technology, huge conference. like 3 or 4 years ago. And he got me really into digital citizenship because he's brilliant in when he talks about that. But yes, really, really great educator, really brilliant. Definitely check out his book. But I want to also kind of talk a little bit about how difficult change can be sometimes, especially with everything that was going on. And some of the stuff, you know, even before COVID, before all this stuff on social media, and just seeing how people interact with each other. Because there's a lot happening right now. There's a lot to process. There's a lot of unknown. And it's so important that we be gentle with ourselves and with others, because there's just a lot happening. And speaking of brain science, because I am also very into brain science, there's been a somewhat new finding. There's been a psychological principle for a while now that when someone comes across something that is in difference to their opinion or their way of viewing the world or their way of doing things, that they have the same fight or flight response as if they were physically attacked. So, and this has been proven as brain science, that when anyone, and this is a natural human phenomenon, that when we come across something that is a difference of opinion, that challenges our way of thinking, that challenges our way of doing things, that challenges our way of viewing something, that our immune system responds and has a fight or flight reaction. You see this a lot on social media as a beautiful example, because you'll see someone who disagrees. And the person may first respond nicely and be like, you know, this is my viewpoint on this particular person, on this particular whatever. And then the person responds that originally posted, and they'll either attack them or they will block them and unfriend them or silence them in some other way. And that our initial reaction is to either respond with attacking that person or by shutting down and removing it. But what happens when we do that is that we stop changing, that we stop having perspectives that are different than our own, that we shut down the possibilities that are outside of what we already believe and are comfortable with. And I think that, especially with things going on right now, this is a wonderful opportunity, like you said, Leslie, to always be a learner, to let our guard down a little bit and know that this process is happening. So if I see someone who is attacking somebody else for a perspective, or unfriending everyone who disagrees with them, or if I have that initial reaction, I know that I need to take a step back, that my brain is literally doing what it's supposed to do, which is protecting my perspective, I guess, that I have to overcome that. And I also have to be understanding that when people respond this way, if I'm talking about something that may be making them uncomfortable or pushing them to change something that they're used to doing, that I can expect a fight or flight response, but I can work with that, and I can work with them through that. But that's just kind of a little interesting piece of brain science, just to kind of share with all the stuff that's gone on. You know, and with more people being at home means that there's a lot more people with time on social media. Not saying that's necessarily the case, but there's been a lot more people I have noticed that have voices lately. So, you know, the good and the bad of that. So to be gentle with each other and online and in our interactions, and to be gentle with ourselves. And in order to make change happen, we have to kind of be willing to work through this kind of cognitive response. But that's a really quick thing. I have a resource at the end. If you are really interested in what happens and what this means, you're welcome to check it out. But I just kind of thought it kind of puts a little research behind some of the stuff that we see that happens in our personal relationships sometimes. So I'm going to hop over to Laura, who's going to talk to us about a much nicer and more positive subject of mindfulness.
So in the very short amount of time that we have left, I hate to breeze through this, but we will. I am a yoga teacher as well. I teach yoga like early mornings, late in the evenings. Anyways, mindfulness is so important to me. And as Leslie mentioned, you know, some of those amazing yoga apps and those free resources, but just how important it is to take care of ourselves. Seth mentioned right now just the uncertainty of the future and the feeling of things that are out of our control. And one of the things that we can control, though, is our mind and is our breath. And if that's the only two things that we are in control of, that's very, very powerful. So we're going to go through just a really quick, like 1 minute guided meditation. So if your video is on and you want to turn it off, you can. Wherever you are, you can just kind of sit up a little bit and get comfy. I'm going to read a script to you that, like I said, it'll be about 1 to 2 minutes. So here we go. Start by settling into a comfortable position and allow your eyes to close or keep them open with a soft gaze. Begin by taking several long, slow, deep breaths, breathing in fully and exhaling fully. Breathe in through your nose and out through your nose, or breathe out through your mouth. Allow your breath to find its own natural rhythm. Bring your full attention to noticing each in-breath as it enters your nostrils, travels down to your lungs, and causes your belly to expand. And notice how each out-breath, with your belly contracting, air moving up through the lungs, back up through the nostrils or mouth. Invite your full attention to flow with your breath. Notice how the inhale is different from the exhale. You may experience the air as cool as it enters your nose and warm as you exhale. As you turn more deeply inward, begin to let go of noises around you. If you are distracted by sounds in the room, simply notice them and then bring your intention back to your breath. Simply breathe as you breathe, not striving to change anything about your breath. Don't try to control your breath in any way. Observe and accept your experience in this moment without judgment, paying attention to each inhale and exhale. If your mind wanders to thoughts, plans, or problems, simply notice your mind wandering. Watch the thought as it enters your awareness as neutrally as possible. Then practice letting go of the thought as if it were a leaf floating down a stream. In your mind, place each thought that arises on a leaf and watch it as it floats out of sight down the stream. Then bring your attention back to your breath. Your breath is an anchor you can return to over and over again when you become distracted by thoughts. You might become distracted by pain or discomfort in the body, or twitching or itching sensations that draw your attention away from the breath. You may also notice feelings arising, perhaps sadness or happiness, frustration or contentment. Acknowledge whatever comes up, including thoughts or stories. Simply notice where your mind went without judging it, pushing it away, clinging to it, or wishing it were different. And simply refocus your mind and guide your attention back to your breath. Breathe in and breathe out. Follow the air all the way in and all the way out. Mindfully be present moment by moment with your breath. If your mind wanders away from your breath, just notice without judging it, be it a thought, emotion, or sensation that hooks your attention, and gently guide your awareness back to your breathing. As this practice comes to an end, slowly allow your attention to expand and notice your entire body, and then beyond your body to the room you are in. When you are ready, open your eyes and come back fully alert and awake. The breath is always with you as a refocusing tool to bring you back to the present moment. Set your intention to use this practice throughout your day to help cultivate and strengthen attention. All right, so we are back, and on the next couple slides, Brittany, you can click ahead to where it says, take an internal weather forecast. I think that's maybe the next slide. How does your body feel if you were to give yourself a forecast? Are you feeling, we could have done this before and after, are you feeling calm? Are you feeling clear? Hopefully you're not feeling foggy or hazy. And both of these practices, conscious awareness of the breath periodically throughout the day, and then just taking an internal weather forecast are actually two things that I do throughout the day, because it does honestly feel like, especially with this last week, these last few days, that people are really telling me how I'm supposed to feel. At times reading through social media, I feel all sorts of emotions, and I feel like people are telling me how I should respond, how I should react, how I should be, what emotions I should be going through. And that's really, to me personally, should not be how we are approaching this, right? We want to educate people on situations. We don't need to tell people how to feel. That really can spiral out of control. And I think maybe that could be the result to some of the things that we're seeing right now. So take back control of your emotions, and we can do that just through the breath, just conscious breathing exercises, closing the eyes, inhaling and exhaling. It sounds so simple, but it's so powerful. The next couple slides, I know we're really short on time, just give some more kind of explanation as to what mindfulness is, and a little bit on the difference between mindfulness and SEL, social emotional learning. Leslie did a really great job of giving some good tips and resources for that too. So Brittany, if you want to go to slide 28, there's just a couple apps that are free. I know somebody mentioned the Calm app, free for educators. Stop, Breathe, Think is another one that's free for educators, and then also Headspace. So I've given you those resources. The last slide also has just some various links for resources on mindfulness, some SEL, and then just ways to have these conversations and incorporate some of this in to your classroom, if that's something that you would like to do. So you will have all of these resources, and we can go ahead and click ahead to those. I know we're running short on time, so we can take some question and answers. I'll also drop links into the chat for the survey, and remember, this is where you will get a copy of a certificate. So if you are needing that certificate, you'll get that upon completion of the survey. I'll also give you copies of the slides. And then, as we had mentioned earlier, we will post this recording on our YouTube channel. And so this recording will be up later tonight or tomorrow. If there are any questions for Leslie or Brittany or myself, go ahead and either drop them in the chat, or you can come off of mute. Feel free to ask. We've really enjoyed this time with you, Leslie. We hate that the hour went so fast.
I know, so quick. I'm sorry I took up so much time.
That's okay. This was good. Great conversations and great resources that you shared.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you again for having me.
Yes. Anything else from anybody? You have the survey, you have the slides. Of course, you'll have our contact information if you want to reach out to us.
Yes.
And we so appreciate all of you. Just keep on the lookout via Twitter and our website for updates for FI Connects as we get into August and September. We're kind of rethinking how we're going to structure this. So
yeah, we are taking a summer break, just like school, to breathe ourselves and to take a look at what would be most needed as we go into this next school year. So we're kind of also waiting to see what plans come forth for schools. We may put out a poll asking what you feel like you need as well. So we will definitely share out updates as they come.
yes.
And thank you for your time today.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming. It's been great.
And thank you, Leslie, again. It was awesome. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
You too, Brian. Enjoy your summer.
We'll stay a little while in case there's additional questions or if anyone has any trouble with the feedback form. But this was great. And thank you, Laura. I think we need more breathing exercises in future.
Yes, I loved that.
I know.
Very nice. That was the most pleasant Zoom experience I think I've ever.
So calming.
Yes. Yeah, I always like underestimate how powerful just like a couple minutes of that is. It's so powerful. Yeah.
My watch tells me when to breathe sometimes, and I'm too busy to stop. But I will say when I do stop, it really is helpful just to I don't think you realize how often you don't get a full breath. You know, like you just continue to go and go. And as a runner, I have to focus on my breathing a lot. But I don't tend to do that in my everyday life. And so really thinking about how you inhale and exhale and how that makes you feel, it's super important.
Yes.
Will I get some of the feedback information? I'd love to hear what people thought or if they had any questions or.
Yeah, we can collect it for you. I believe it all goes to the same spreadsheet. Correct me if I'm wrong, Laura. But we should be able to pull it out.
Yeah, we can pull it out for today's.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because we're the only, FI Connect session running right now, so it'd be easy to differentiate.
Gotcha.
So not a problem.
I'll look for that right now, actually.
Oh, that's nice that your students remind you to breathe too. It's important. They all occasionally need to breathe and take a moment. I have a few people still in the room. Does anybody have any questions or need anything before we close out for today? No, doesn't sound like it. All right. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Laura, for co-leading with me. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and close out, but you can always message us if you have any additional questions or anything at all, and we'll get you some of the responses, Leslie. But thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.